Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. In earlier videos, I've talked about how everybody always has three choices, and up, down, or straight ahead. And the people who have been choosing to go down into the power games are creating problems for the rest of the world. We're watching, let's say, greed. We're watching political problems, grabs for power, revenge, and it seems like that's really, really difficult to overcome. We're watching in the United States here. We're watching the January 6th committee deal with the coup attempt for our elections, and that what a shock that is for the United States to go through. Our Constitution seems to be still holding, which is great, and so which means we can carry that idea forward into the next level. Okay, and then there's straight ahead. We're watching the existing government come up with solutions that are based on not so much power games. They are power games, but they're also the old structure that is no longer working, because it was always based on misunderstandings or old power games. Let's say the Republicans have gone down into the power games with by holding on to Donald Trump and the rise of authoritarianism in the world. But then the existing structure doesn't have it's based on plans that didn't address the root cause of the problem. So that is basically going down too. And then the other alternative is to go up and to do what's in everyone's best interest. But that's pretty hard for people to understand how to do that. How do you actually do what's in everyone's best interest? And that isn't necessarily something where people know how to do that. And the younger generation, let's say the people, the youngest generations in places like Russia and the United States are being undermined by the power games that the government is playing. It's become very, very oppressive for the younger generation who were born programmed to live in peace, and the older generations are either waging war, or the younger generation was raised to live in peace and to evolve to a higher level, and the people who are playing the games are dragging everybody down, and the oppression is getting to be pretty bad for people. The earth is a closed ecosystem. We live in an environment that has a global concept now. The media is global. The internet has created communications, easy communications that's global. We can do telephone calls. We can watch on YouTube what's happening on the other side of the world, and it's free, basically. Some individual in one country on the opposite side of the world can do a video, and we can watch what that person's life is. We can go on Google Maps, for example, and we can drive down a street on the other side of the world, and instead of having to dream and imagine what it was like on the other side of the world, we can actually kind of be there, and we can drive down the street and we can see what it's like in different parts of the world. We can get glimpses of everything. If you go on a trip, you know what your hotel is going to look like on the other side of the world, because you can choose to do that by just being on Google Maps. So we live in a global society, and we're being impacted by weather patterns from the other side of the world. I watched a live stream yesterday of what was happening at the Supreme Court, and the man who was doing the video, the live stream, got a comment from somebody in England, and he said, hi England, welcome to the stream. And that person in England was simultaneously watching what was happening in our Supreme Court, and how the decisions were being handed out. But at the same time, our weather patterns, they're watching us, and our weather patterns, because we live in a closed environment, our weather patterns from the East Coast, where that was taken, go up to England and affect them. When we have a storm here, eventually it works its way up to England. So we can watch from the satellite what's happening, how our storms are traveling across the Pacific and cross over and then go up, and how they go to Africa. We live in a closed environment. There's a flow of information. There's the information highway, they used to call it. I don't know if they still do that. The information highway. There's the weather patterns. There's Google Maps, where we're looking down on ourselves. That's one of the reasons why the organization logo is the globe seen from outer space, the blue marble idea, with the light shining from it like an eclipse, a full eclipse. But then I also have, so we have the view looking down from heaven, so to speak, and then we have the view, I also have clouds, so it looks like we're on the earth looking up. We're looking at, we are a closed environment. So the environment and all the issues that the Supreme Court addresses related to the environment, we look at ourselves as being Americans, and that only addresses that. But what the Supreme Court does here affects what's happening out in the rest of the world. We are a closed environment. There's the flow that happens, but there's the economic flow too. And when people are playing the power games, they go down into the games, or they just have failed policies, relied on, they don't address the policies of this global issue, then basically what we have is the flow is blocked, and we have to figure out how to break that flow open so that we have the flow of information, that we have the flow, that we're not creating vortexes within a country that leads to hurricanes. We want everything. We want the money to flow. We want the winds to flow. We want the ocean currents to flow. We want to be in the flow. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, was the being in the flow. How do we bring that out so that we overcome the fears that are creating these blocks in the world? Okay, so how do we do something like that? I wanted to address the idea first that we are a global society. We are part of the globe. We can't just build the walls around ourselves like Donald Trump said, we're America first. That doesn't work in a global society. We can't just say, I'm going to keep all the money to myself and I'm never going to spend it. I'm never going to do it. I'm just going to keep it to myself. I want the flow to come to me, but I'm never going to give it out, or I'm never going to allow it to happen. So what happens is that, is the sense of greed creates a problem, because there's also the counterflow that goes along with it. It's like the issue of the economy. We are still part of that. There's an overview idea of the economy. I went to the store yesterday and I was shocked at the cost of the goods that were there, and it seemed like there should be something that was going to help stop the idea of inflation. There's supposed to be something that helps stop it. And that is why we have to keep this flow open, and we have to address the fears that are causing it to go one way. When many people are in one area and thinking, I have to do something, but I don't know what to do, it creates a circular thinking pattern that I have to do something, but I don't know what to do. It's actually a Norse rune. It's the rune Dagas. It's I have to do something, but I don't know what to do. But I have to do something, but I don't know what to do. And you get into this circular thinking idea, and then the midpoint is between the two is where everybody moves ahead, where you're doing what's in everyone's best interest. So what we want to do is take this and turn it into this. So how do we do that? We're burning up, and I wanted to address today what we can do about fuel issues, gas, burning gasoline, oil in internal combustion engines. I have an old pickup truck that gets about 11 miles to the gallon, and I don't, basically it's not something that I want to drive anymore, from the standpoint of I've had the issue of these issues with my truck. Not burning up fuel, not related to that, but other people have been trying to pull the energy one direction, anything. And I'm not going to go into that because it really doesn't matter. What I'm talking about is what's in everyone's best interest, and that is I've always felt uncomfortable about using gas. So transportation, and how do we get there? The younger people are going to be able to take this. We're talking about the transition period here. So what we have right now is we have to work to address the fears that people have about having everything they need. And the way that we can do that is simple. My focus in the organization, I'm working on a book, and let's say that there are 12 in a 12-pointed star. There are 12 different people. A Flower of Life pattern has 6 people working together, but you take the 2 of them together and you create a 12-pointed star, and everyone addresses certain aspects of it. If you have read the Celestine Prophecy and the 10th Insight, you can get an idea about how, by James Redfield, you can get an idea back probably in the 2000, I don't remember when he published that book, those 2 books. But those 2 books give a really good idea about how this Flower of Life pattern works and how people come together. So I recommend that if you can go to the library or get it off Amazon, or I'm not sure if the publisher is still publishing that book. It was just a classic. It's a perfect example of how this Flower of Life pattern idea works, and how the games that are being played interfere with that, and then how it goes up to the higher level. So if you have a little bit of time and you don't mind reading that book, it's a really good synopsis of this idea that we're talking about, how to function, overcome these issues, and then function on a higher level. When we're talking about any issue like fuel, we have to come up with, we know that the fuel prices are gone down because of the wars, the war in Russia. But now what we want to do is we want to do kind of an end run around that. So in other words, instead of saying we're afraid because we can't get fuel, how about the alternatives fuel sources, start to become developed, there's a rationale for the fuel prices to go, fuel innovation to be, or the transportation and fuel and that idea industry to be able to function. So what I'm going to tell you about this is that we want to look a 20-year plan down the road and give people the time to do that. We're going to look at that two opposing ideas here. We're going to go. So let's say that the innovative technologies, like coming up with the saltwater batteries that don't require lithium. There's the alternative fuel sources that are being developed, batteries and energy where they can be recharged and things like that. Those alternatives are, let's say, down the future, and they're going to be looking at them and separating out, and the ones that get there are the ones that are going to be the most effective, the most efficient. But on the other side, you can't take the economies that are based on oil and destroy them. So what we are going to do is, this is one of the prophecies that we had, one of the promises that we had, was that there's going to be, we're going to develop a formula that will allow the OPEC nations to still base their economy on oil, but instead of having huge amounts of oil being pulled out of the earth and burned in a single day, and much less 50 years or 100 years, and the population getting higher. What we're talking about is allowing this formula. It will be to take the small amount of oil and turn it into a very beautiful fabric, like a silk type fabric, something so beautiful that will allow oil producing countries to just do a small amount and still maintain their economy. And not only that, but these luxury type products will be something where it will allow people, instead of going back to wearing, if we get kicked back 5,000 years, we're wearing skins, or we're going to have to weave flax again, and or go back to caveman days. We don't want to be kicked back all the time that we're wearing skins like the Native Americans again did hundreds of years ago. Okay, and feathers, do we want to do that? No, we want to keep progressing higher and functioning that way. So one of the things that we have is that the idea of this new technology, this new invention, the information, the formula hasn't been given to us on how to do it yet. We have to start to come together. My group has to stop playing power games and come together and work together, because we're parallel to the 200 countries. And right now, the idea of creativity is coming up with a plan, but it's also kind of like herding cats. That's where I've been herding 200 cats. One is enough to try and figure out how to get that cat to do it. I know how to deal with one cat, but dealing with 200 cats at one time is a pretty tough thing to do. So what we have now is we have one idea about the formula that was going to allow the OPEC countries to protect their economy. There's no fear associated with that. And then the other one is the power source, the innovative technology with the power source idea. I suppose if we go down, we could all go back to riding horses again. That's always an option, and it's a very fuel efficient, because horses can eat hay. All we have to do is grow hay and grass. Okay, but do you really want to ride a horse? I've been thinking, the 4th of July is coming up. I was thinking about how John Adams rode his horse from Boston, the Boston area, to Philadelphia, and I thought, oh man. Well, maybe instead of riding his horse, maybe he took carriages, and it was still a pretty nasty ride, pretty bumpy. Anyway, the other alternative is this idea about the free power source invention, the three of them coming together. I've told you before that this is the power source for the space. When we go into space, when we eventually go into space, this is going to be the power source for it. We're not going to be using uranium and that. Hey, the aliens don't travel using nuclear power. That's nuclear. We're going to be banning nuclear power because of the subatomic structure of the atoms that the scientists don't know yet. Let's say what they're doing is this: the nuclear power is going to be banned because it seems like it's a great idea, but it isn't. And because of the smallest subatomic particles are actually universes, and when you destroy a universe under universal law, your universe will be destroyed. Do we want to annihilate mankind, the entire universe, because we can't come up with something better? So let's say Lady Gaia and I am that I am, our creator, has given us this information so that we can, all technology, you can say, is based on nature, and this is based on human chakras. This is let's say, this is the Earth, a closed ecosystem. And then we have the oceans here. This is like the oceans. And then we have the 12 dimensions. So this, you could say, is a closed ecosystem, but we are all individually a closed ecosystem also. That is actually part of a bigger idea. Okay, so what we have is the different dimensions, and the aliens, when they travel, if they're third dimensional beings, working together, and then they go up to like the 8th dimension. I should number these, make it a little bit easier. They go up to the 8th or the 9th dimension. They go up interdimensionally, and then they can travel between here and there. And that's why I've told you this before. When they travel, they go like this. They're going interdimensionally. They don't travel like this a long distance, and they go like this, and then they travel from one place to the other, and that's like teleportation. They can teleport, and there are people now who are starting to teleport. Mankind hasn't been able to achieve on an overall basis. Some people have been able to teleport. In fact, Jesus of Nazareth was able to teleport after his crucifixion. I know that sounds really weird, but if you believe that he died on the cross, he didn't actually die on the cross. He was able to step down and teleport, but that is going to draw a lot of ire from people who firmly believe that. But hey. So anyway, what happened is the aliens travel this way, so we have to figure out how to get. But if our human body has 7 chakras in it, and then the others are the kingdoms, we can travel. The alien kingdom here is basically where you can go up here and move over. When you pray, part of you is connected to I am that I am, Lady Gaia. We are part of the universe. This is the universe and universal law. So the 12th dimension is actually Lady Gaia and I am that I am, but they are making their ascension. So you see what I mean? They're willing to work with us because they are part of us. We are part of their creation. We live in Lady Gaia's body, and Lady Gaia is a closed ecosystem. The universe is a closed ecosystem too. So we're looking at where we fit into a town, let's let's say a county or a certain area, a little bit larger area, a province. We're looking at a state, or depending on where you are, a region. We're looking at the country. We're looking at the continent. And all of these things are going to be playing out over and over again as, let's say, areas where we work within, but we're also part of the bigger idea. When we create the international government, there'll be continental areas, but then there'll also be the overview idea. So no president will ever go into another country. Vladimir Putin in the future would never be allowed to. The dispute between Ukraine and Russia would go to the international courts, and everybody else, hey, let the attorneys handle that, and people who have the power to do that, and then the rest of us will just continue on with this flow idea. So we've given our power over to governments, and they don't necessarily solve our problems for us. So what we have to do is we have to start to, instead of walling ourselves off, we have to start to realize that we are part of all of this that's happening. If you want to wall yourself off, go ahead. But don't go on the internet. Don't, close your eyes. Stay in your little place, and then just figure out how you're going to live your life without an economic flow that allows you to, let's say, have fruit that's out of season in where you live. You can go back to hunting, and you can go back to growing fruit and vegetables, and then canning them and drying them, and travel by walking through the forest or dragging it on a platform, a travois, on a platform behind your horse. You can do that if you want to be a survivalist. But don't drag everybody else backwards in their progress while you're trying to live yours. Okay? So now what we have, with our Creator's help, with this idea of basing this technology on our chakras, and the earth has 12 dimensions, and if we want to travel to another country, let's not work to develop a nuclear power that is like there's an effort to create small nuclear power generators. That seems like a great idea, but it goes against universal law because you don't have the right to blow up other people's universes. For a period of time, it was kind of allowed, but now it has to be banned. So we have to address this idea of functioning based on universal law. And that is kind of the first idea. That's why I introduced that. So if we want to solve the problem with fuel, we have to start to address this idea of looking at what we have and supporting the idea that fuel should not necessarily be burned, that if you come up with something like this, that the only thing is you can take something like this and invest a small amount of money in, compared to what we've been wasting, a small amount of money in its manufacturing process, and then you just rely on this. And then we have to also be working with elemental kingdom, because that is what attaches us, makes a connection here. And I'll explain that later when we introduce this technology, how the aliens can drag tons of metal with them up to the let's say the 8th dimension, 9th, 10th, 11th, not the 11th. If they can drag it up and go across to another place, and then you also have to know how to get there. So we'll talk about the aliens later. That's also part of my process. I am my 12-pointed star. My role in this is the future, evolution, where we're going to, and at the end of our evolution, in my books, I address the end of our evolution and where we're going and how to get there, this whole idea. And then my job is creativity, coming up with a plan, an idea. So I am an idea person, and I'm focused on ideas, but I also keep facing the idea of creativity also includes facing the boogeyman who are trying to steal it from you, and we go into that in the planning process books. So I'm always being hit like a science fiction story where somebody comes up with a new technology and the government comes in and wants to steal it so that they can use it for weapons. Okay? That's kind of a classic plot. So you can say that's my life. That's where I'm dealing with that idea. There'll be other people who are going to all come in, you could say, and be part of this other process of it. And they'll address different things. But so my plan is this, and I have this idea, all of these ideas for new inventions, new ideas, and that. But then when the technology people come in, when it evolves through the planning process, then they will help come up and take this idea of basing it on the chakras, and they will help to bring it about. But we also have to be working with the elementals and all the other levels of this to make it happen. Otherwise, we won't be, and universal law, otherwise we won't be able to get our rear ends off the ground and pick up a spaceship. We have to be working with all the different levels to make it happen. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm kind of introducing the idea that everybody has to be working together for world peace to come, and everybody has a part to play. On an individual basis, the idea that we need to work with is the idea, instead of saying, well, we need to develop the new paper sources. Okay, great. The publishing industry is low on paper. Instead of people saying, well, we're just going to make a bundle on this by hoarding this, or we're going to just hold this back, we're going to keep the flow from happening because we can make a lot of money on this. We can tip things our direction, squeeze people more, and then take power away from them. What we're going to do is we're going to go around, we're going to do an end run on that idea, and we're going to start to function as if this is heaven on earth, and in heaven people manifest what they need. So this is another thing that's in my set of books, my body of knowledge that I have, and that is manifestation, and bringing to you what you need through manifestation. That is, by what you dwell on in your thinking, you bring towards you. What you think, so fears, the fear of circular thinking patterns, what you do is you bring toward you the energy, and that's what creates hurricanes. Okay, so if there's a hurricane, you can dispel it by stopping the circular thinking pattern and knowing that there is a way to solve the problem. And you just don't see it yet. So manifestation will help us, instead of it being based on our flow, we are part of a bigger flow, and that is the universe and universal law. So you can rely on universal law to handle issues about greed, and instead of allowing it to destroy you, what you wanted to do is know that there's a solution and that you haven't seen it yet. And now we're going to create, like on this YouTube channel, I'm bringing down ideas and I'm opening them up for debate amongst everybody here. And if there's something that you want to comment on, you're welcome to comment on. And then we can talk about manifesting that. We can come together and manifest it. You can, at night before you go to bed, you can say, okay, I'd like to manifest this. You think about it very clearly in your mind, and then, but it has to be, You can't say, okay, I'm going to manifest somebody to get hit by lightning. That doesn't work. You just say, okay, we have a Lady Gaia, I am that I am, that's their names. You can call them God or Lord or whatever you want to call them, but their real names are I am that I am and Lady Gaia. We live in Lady Gaia's body. What happens is you can go up there to the 12th dimension, your 12th floor, because this is you too. You can take a little trip up to the 12th dimension, and you can say to God, hey, we have a situation here that needs some attention. The flow here is getting blocked. So what I'd like to do is figure out how to bring the flow in so that all the people who know how to solve these problems have solutions. And then basically allow the Creator to help us do it. And I'll give you an example of that. For world peace to come, people had to be, the first thing was, everybody had to be exposed to universal law. Okay? That was the first requirement. But then half the population had to pray for peace. And when we started our prayer circle, basically we prayed for peace. And all of a sudden we started to get answers to our prayers. We got answers to our prayers. And we got all of this information just started to come towards us. So if you would like to have this, we were praying for people in crisis. We were praying for, we had people who had little babies who had tumors the size of grapefruits in their abdomen, and the tumor went away. We had miracles happening all the time. Our prayer circle was just like, we were just so hyped all the time that it was just, there were like 20 of us sometimes, and we were getting all this information that was just mind-blowing. And it was just all coming towards us, like this invention, So we're looking at this invention as just part of the information that came through. And this is not just possible. It's basically, it's there, and it's an idea. But now the people who can take the technology and turn it into a real invention, the people who know how to do about production, basically, those are the people you have creativity and productivity. The people who can produce this are there, and they need ideas. And so you take an idea person and give them to a productivity person and then a prosperity person. And those are the people who can make a financial flow out of it and support it by bringing in the money and the flow. And then you take the glitches people, the people who know how to solve problems, because what happens if, and then the people who deal with security issues, what happens if this gets stolen? Not a problem, because it won't work. If this gets stolen, it won't work because it's breaking universal law, and what'll happen, that person won't have any power. It's like a feedback machine too. Okay. So now, when you talk about the flow, you have to be doing what's in everyone's best interest. When you're talking to God, you can pray, but it's not a good idea to pray for somebody to get hit by lightning. No, let's just do what's in everyone's best interest. And then the flow, instead of being all directed towards the people who are afraid and in circular thinking patterns, we can start to direct this into a different flow. And that's what my daughter and my mother-in-law and I did when we were traveling one time, and we were paralleling a tornado. By the time we did our prayer circle, and by the time that happened, it was a beautiful night. The tornado had just dissipated. We helped to dissipate a tornado by doing our prayer circle. So by doing that, it was like the fear creates a low energy spot, and the energy just kind of goes into it and gets caught like a rock in a river that goes around and around. So what we want to do is to keep the flow going, is we want to pull out all these rocks And you can do that by by working to manifest the things that you need. And just say, if when you go to the store and there's a sticker shock and you're going, how can eggs be $5 a dozen? The chickens but then what you have, and I'm not complaining about the farmers, because there's fuel costs and there's all these other costs available. So what we need to do is address all these issues, and you can always buy some chickens and do that yourself, but we don't want to rely on that so much because you also don't want to put them on a business by being too self-sufficient. You don't want to reach the point where the economy gets smaller and smaller all the time, and people are completely self-sufficient, because otherwise how do you go out and kill the deer and skin it and tan the hide and then figure out how to do that without any tools like caveman days? Okay, so we don't want to kick ourselves back, but in another video I'll talk about how we are kicking ourselves back and in time, and then go from there. So you can manifest what you need by just going and talking to God and saying, I know there's a flow here that is being blocked by something. I don't know what it is, but you know what it is. I'm going to do my part here, and I am going to do my part on this. I'm just asking you for help. And if enough people do that, what'll happen is it'll just come. The fear can be dissipated on that, because somebody will come up with an idea that by manifesting that and by you allowing the flow to come back down inside of you and the information, you can actually come up with these ideas too. It isn't just us. You can pray, you can do the prayer circle too. And in fact, we'll be working with other people who have in the future to help set up our crisis centers. So you can know that there's a solution to everything, and you just don't see it yet. One of the things that we've been dealing with is, what about the people who are getting revenge and they're in circular thinking patterns and they die? And I'll go into what hell is and how that functions to actually, basically, it's not okay. It's something that we'll talk about later. Okay, so it's not what people think it is. But we don't want people to be trapped in a situation where they see no solution. So this is where we are now. Is let's deal with the fears. Let's deal with help people overcome their fears. Let's help people deal with this. Okay. All right, so I ask that you like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for sitting and listening. I should make these videos shorter, for heaven's sakes. Everybody's busy.